Hello and welcome to Just One More Watch. I'd recommend grabbing yourself a caffeinated beverage because we have quite a lot to unpack today, quite a lot to discuss. I appreciate I'm going to be doing most of the talking, but I'm really looking forward to reading all of your comments today. So please have a think about my questions and leave me your answers in the comment section. This video is essentially a review of the San Martin SN009. It's their Grand Seiko lookalike. I believe this one is about 2 months old. Now it is just over 2 years since I reviewed my first San Martin. It was their SLA 017 Homage. I reckon I paid just around $200 for mine on a rubber strap. They've tweaked this design a couple of times since then. You can still pick these up all day long for under 250 USD on a metal bracelet. And I think for that money, that watch is fantastic. I'll leave a link in the description of the video, as always, to everything I refer to today. This watch, their Grand Seiko lookalike, is $510 US. So double the price of the SLA 017 lookalike, and I think crucially, over that $500 psychological price point. I reckon there are psychological price points at $299, $499 and $999, and I think it's tough to get people to spend over those figures if they're not used to it, particularly on a product that is from AliExpress. It's a Chinese brand and it has not a lot of history, shall we say. Admittedly, for your $510, you do get a Swiss-made Sellita SW200, which I'm sure you all know is a clone, a Swiss-made clone of the ETA 2824. There is, however, a B story today. There is a subplot. You can also buy this watch for $378. Now, that's $130 difference. That is a chunk of money for mostly the same watch, but it does have a different movement. This one has a PT5000. What's a PT5000, I hear you ask? Well, it is a Chinese-made clone of the ETA 2824. Kind of like for like with the Sellita, but obviously one is Swiss-made, whereas one is made in China. Now, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this PT5000, and I will give you my own thoughts about it as well. There is also a third question to be asked today. All of that is rather redundant if the watch is crap, so that's what we've got to establish first. Let's flip the camera and get on with it. So then, are San Martin overreaching at $500 for a borrowed design? What about this PT5000 movement, and do we care anyway? I must say the packaging kind of ringing a few bells. I'm not sure quite what it is, but I'm getting a bit of a feeling of deja vu when I look at this small plastic case. Yeah, I think pretty much every Chinese brand now is knocking their watches out in these little $2 cases. Inauspicious, but they'll at least protect it in transit. 2-year warranty, usual instruction card, and a stamp dated warranty card on this one. Now, there is a supplied NATO strap, which I'm not going to bother with because I don't think it's suitable for a NATO, this watch anyway. It does come with spring bars and a NATO and 3 spare links. So I reckon this one is for big guys. It's a big design. That's going to fit wrists of up to about 8.25 inches, I reckon. Before I get completely carried away with myself today, I owe a thank you to Mr. P. He is the owner of this watch. That's the man with 400 plus watches. He gave me a whole bunch of stuff last week, including that horrendous Bulova, a couple of Christopher Wards and a couple of Seiko, so you'll be hearing the name again on the channel in future. And I should also point out that this is the PT5000 version, so I do get to test that movement on the time grapher a bit later on in the video. So I said it was a Grand Seiko lookalike. What Grand Seiko does it look like? Well, it looks like this one, the SBGA229. They do a couple of different versions of this. I believe there's a titanium one and a stainless steel one. This is the one that I think it most replicates the look of and replicates the size of. It's a big boy today. 44 millimeters in diameter, 13.6 mil thick, which isn't too bad, and a 50.2 mil lug to lug, so that's actually quite wearable for a 44. 20 millimeter lug width, fabulous taper all the way down to 17.2, back up to 19.5 at the clasp. Sized up for me, 7-inch wrist, 3 links removed as discussed. This one weighs in at 183 grams, so yeah, it's definitely chunky today. All stainless steel case, crown, stainless steel bezel, full stainless steel bracelet with solid links, solid end links, and a milled clasp. I'll come back to the bracelet later on. The bracelet, I think, is probably the highlight of the whole watch. Coming in a close second to the bracelet though is the finishing standard of the head of the watch, the case. etc. If you're going to homage a Grand Seiko, then you better do a bloody good job of it, and I think they have. That polishing on the side of the case is fantastic. Lovely brushing on the upper lug surface, super sharp machining to the bezel. Screw down crown, 200 meters of water resistance on this one, and there is the San Martin shark logo on the crown. It also features on the case back. We have a piece of flat sapphire crystal with a reasonable amount of anti-reflective undercoating. That's particularly noticeable when I take the watch outside later on, and we have a 120 click unidirectional rotating dive time bezel with ceramic insert. Bezel action is pretty good and everything lines up. I must say though, the bezel action is a little bit light. It's quite easy to just give the watch a bit of a knock and move that on. It is going to be something that you probably, if you're wearing this one out and about, you will end up moving the bezel, you will end up knocking it. Yeah, it doesn't take an awful lot to get it to move one click. I have noticed that. Bracelet then, look at that standard of finishing. That is magnificent. If you opt for the PT5000, this is a $378 watch, and I think you get the best bracelet I have ever seen at a watch under $500. Pin and collar system here, which is okay for the money. You know, if it was $2,000, I would be moaning. I've moaned at Seikos for $1,000, etc., etc. But even for $500, this bracelet is very, very, very good. It really is. Now, it looks like a kind of 5-link. There are actually 4 links. Let me show you the underside. Yeah, okay, actually 4 links were removed to fit my wrist. So the 2 outer upper surfaces, if you see what I mean, are the same link. There's a kind of bar link in them in the middle, and the center links are 3 separate pieces. It is just fabulously finished. Very, very nice. High polish, obviously, to those 2 outer edges, and you can see what I mean there about the pin and collar system. The clasp is very nice. I've seen this on other San Martins, and I have praised it on other San Martins. Their new hexagon logo embedded in a very nicely brushed upper surface. High polish chamfers, 4 micro adjust holes, and it's a double security pusher. It just doesn't feel quite as special as the rest of the bracelet, which really does feel a bit special for the money. Case back is nicely done, stainless steel screwed down with the shark logo as mentioned, kind of embossed there in the middle. Nice mixture of bead blasted, polished and brushed surfaces, but semi-sterile, no spec sheet. I'm guessing they use this one on a number of other models as well. And you know what, because we're talking about the movement today, I'm going to crack this one so that we can have a look at it. And there it is. First one I've had the chance to look at as well, and I must say it looks like all of the other ETA 2824 clones that I have seen in the past. Nice to see a metal movement holder. Nice also to see 2 case back gaskets there helping protect this one from water penetration. They're made by a company called HK Precision Technology, as in Hong Kong Precision Technology, and I believe they debuted these in 2015, so they're around 5 or 6 years old now. Haven't seen mass adoption in the market as yet. This is only the second one I've seen, and the other one was in a San Martin as well. They seem to be one of the few companies pushing these. This could be the holy grail for us budget watch lovers though. PT5000s are readily available on eBay for around the high 60s. That's not much more expensive these days than the NH35. There's a squeeze on at the Malaysian factory that makes them. Apparently they're shut down because of coronavirus, so there's more demand than supply at the moment, pushing up prices. Both considerably cheaper than the Miyota 9000 series and a chunk cheaper than the Sellita SW200, about $130. Exactly the difference between the 2 San Martin models. If these PT5000s are any good, we could have a new major player in the budget watch scene. So another question for you. Have you been using a watch with a PT5000 for the long term, say 6 months or a year? How are you getting on with it? How are you finding its accuracy? Please leave me a comment. It would be great to get some feedback from other people about how these movements perform long term. In the short term at least, I have no complaints about the performance of the PT5000 in the back of this San Martin though. Sitting in the flat on its back default position, coming in at a very, very nice +2 seconds per day with a healthy amplitude and minimal beat error. Now, one advantage over the NH35 is this is a high beat movement, being an ETA 2824 clone. It vibrates at 28,800 times per hour. That is 8 ticks per second, so you get that smooth high beat sweep of the second hand that you don't get with a Seiko or a cheaper Miyota 8000 series. Can't speak for all of them, but this one is doing very nicely. Let's go macro then and have a look at the dial and hands, which are obviously copied and pasted from the SBGA 229 Grand Seiko. So we have applied indices, triangle at 12, batons at the 6 and 9, and applied circular indices everywhere else. They have got a high polished silver surround and quite a chunky handset. arrowhead, minute hand, and a very nice segmented cathedral style hour hand with a syringe tip, and we have a very long needle second hand with considerable lollipop counterbalance. They're all loomed. I will show you the loom in just a minute. Date complication at 3, just a printed white frame around that. There is a slightly angled Rehote chapter ring with white minute markers and prominent batons at the 5s, and as noted, that is a ceramic bezel insert with a loom pip at the 12 o'clock. Applied San Martin logo, that's the new hexagon logo, and just the words automatic and 200 meters printed above that baton at 6. It's a little bit drab though, if I'm being honest. Matte black dial, not an awful lot going on. If I zoom in on the hands though, they're a really nicely finished handset. Nice longitudinal brush, you know, real quality there, but if I zoom back out, not a lot going on in the dial. It's not exactly one that you'd be spending all day just staring dreamily at, put it that way. You could spend all night looking at the loom though. The loom is amazing, really, really good. Not quite sure what they use. It's got that ice white blue glow of BGW9 though, so perhaps it is BGW9 or the equivalent. No problems at all here, getting a good read even at the end of my 20-minute test period, which I always think is like 4 to 5 hours of human eye equivalent. On wrist, it is fairly big and it is fairly top heavy, at least on my 7-inch wrist anyway. If you have a bigger wrist than me and you're into this style of watch, then you're probably used to wearing this size, shape and weight of watch. Me, if I'm wearing something this big, 180 plus grams, I like to wear it nice and tight and above the knuckle because I don't want that much weight rattling around. I mean, none of the dimensions are particularly ridiculous in and of themselves, you know, 13.6, 50mm, 44, it's all pretty good. A lot of taper on that bracelet though, perhaps that is some of the reason why it feels a little bit top heavy. Super legible though, which is always what you want from a diver. Big chunky handset, white on black, no problem at all. And outside natural light, like I said earlier on, I think they've put a fair amount of anti-reflective undercoating on that sapphire crystal. When I move the watch around, you can see a little bit of light play, a little bit of bounce back, but you can still see the hands at all times. And another word of praise for the bracelet. How gorgeous does that thing look? Those two high polished elements to the mid links and the smooth high polished outer edges of the outer links, just gorgeous. Really fabulous bracelet, this one. On wrist, it does wear very comfortably. There's some nice high polish undercutting to the case itself, and the bracelet is just luscious. If you have smaller wrists than I do, you may well get away with this one though, because the mid links of the end link point downwards, but it is going to be even more top heavy if your wrists are smaller than 7 inches, I reckon. Moans and niggles then, and yeah, well, okay, let's start with bobbliness and top heaviness. But do you know what? I bet you $10 the Grand Seiko upon which this watch is based wears identically. Next moan is that slightly light on bezel. That is going to catch on things. That is going to turn all by itself. So yeah, not quite as tight as it should be. Next moan is the date complication. It's pretty basic with that little white printed surround, and it sits too far inboard. That is one thing that Grand Seiko did get right. The dial, as discussed, perhaps not as exciting as it might have been if it was in a different colour perhaps. Maybe this watch just needs a little bit of colour to add a little bit of extra punch. And the bracelet may be a stunner, but the bracelet clasp is just okay for a watch at this money. I would love to have seen either a diver's extension if it's going to be a proper dive watch, or a little bit of on-the-fly micro adjust. Perhaps that's something that San Martin can work on for future models. But then we have to talk about the whole Overreach thing. $510 for the Sellita model. Sellita powered watches are getting more and more expensive, but if you're prepared to buy from AliExpress, then you're certainly prepared to go grey market. If you're prepared to go grey market, you can get a Tissot C-Star for the same price as this one, $500, featuring the Powermatic 80 movement. Now, I reviewed the C-Star a couple of years ago and I thought it was all right, but you know, this one has got some tough competition, as I said, once you push north of that $500 price. Now, Tissot have been making watches since 1853, as have San Martin, but in San Martin's case, it means 7 minutes to 7, 3 Tuesdays ago. It just doesn't have the same heritage as the big Swiss brands, and it doesn't have the word Swiss made either side of the baton at 6 either, does it? Now, I am conscious that this PT5000 powered version is a different price proposition at $380, and for that you get a beautifully finished case and a fabulous bracelet. But again, there's some stiff competition. You can get a King Turtle or King Samurai with hacking and hand-winding Seiko movement, sapphire crystal and a ceramic bezel insert for the same money. Again, leave me a comment, let me know which of these you would choose if you had $380 to spend. I think at this stage the PT5000 has still got a bit of catching up to do, at least as a public relations exercise. I posted on the YouTube community tab a little poll the other day, what would you rather have in the same watch for the same price? And overwhelmingly you picked the Seiko NH35 because it is a known quantity as opposed to this one, which at the moment is an unknown quantity. I'll be interested to see whether that changes in the weeks and months to come as these PT5000s become more known in the market. So where does that leave us then? Well, if you have been hankering after a Grand Seiko diver, you love these big chunky watches, but you just don't want to spend the cash, and you're okay with a homage, then yeah, this one is very well made, very nicely manufactured, beautifully finished, and reasonably priced. I would be steering you therefore towards the PT5000 version, I think. That's probably as much as you want to spend on a San Martin. I don't think they quite have the brand cachet yet to justify pushing over $500 US. On that note, I would steer you towards their other models before I recommended this one, unless you're fixated on this big chunky 44mm case shape. I think you get better value from the SLA 017 version at $250 with an NH35, and the movement is a known quantity. So there you have it, well done for finishing the video. What would you have bought? The PT5000, the SW200 or something else like the Tissot or the Seiko? Leave me a message. If you're keen on these San Martin, I would definitely have a look at my original SLA 017 video and what I think is their cracking little vintage release, one of the best budget vintage divers you can buy. Thanks for watching, see you soon.